So because I can't give you a formula for how to get what you want from God and how to overcome every circumstance, I thought, well, let's do the opposite. Let's talk about what it means to experience Christ as our life in the middle of the storms that we can't control, determine, avoid, fix. That's what I decided I would talk about. And a few years ago, I don't know if you've ever done this or if you travel a lot, but I was in New Jersey working with the church there, and I was staying at one of the elders' homes, and he lived right on the ocean, right on one of the harbors. And it was kind of loud. There were foghorns and crashing waves, and it was just kind of loud out on the shore. And so I knew that, and so I'd been warned. So I downloaded on my iPad a little sound machine device. You know what I'm talking about? It does static, and I thought, if it's doing woodsiness and I've got the seashore outside, it probably won't. I'm hearing all these different things. I probably can't sleep. So I'll do the seashore, right? I'm hearing the waves outside. I'll have the cool breeze so I turned the thing on, and it was kind of nice. I thought, okay, I think I can sleep through that. So I started to lay down, set my alarm, turned on the little thing on my iPad, started to go to sleep, and through the night, between the sound outside and the sound machine that sounded like the ocean waves and fog, it was like it tripled the sound. It's like I'm in the middle of the ocean and waves crashing all around me. And it was like the worst night's sleep I've ever had, ever, It was horrible. And you're half awake, and you're thinking, oh, okay, it's the sound machine. I'll go back to sleep. And I think so often what God is intending for our life is the hardest thing. What we're trying to do, what we think is supposed to be a restful experience, is not a restful experience. We're thinking, okay, God has ordained this circumstance for me. He's brought me to a relationship that I don't know what to do with. He's brought me into a class in school that I don't know how to overcome. He's brought me to a church where I like the message, but I don't like everything, or I haven't plugged in yet, or whatever my issue is. Or he's brought me into a crisis in my health or my finances, or I don't know how to get a job, or I don't know what he's going to do next, or I don't know how to overcome this issue in my life. Anybody have any storms brewing in your life? Maybe you're in the middle of one, or you know of one coming, right? I'm not in the storm, but I'm seeing the clouds forming. Anybody, What is God up to in those seasons? Doesn't he love us enough to avoid those problems? Why do I have to go through? Can't he just send me an email like everybody else and say, Mike, you need to know these things? And then I don't have to go through the experience of learning them the hard way? Anybody feel like you're just learning everything the hard way? Is that really the only way? I want to talk about that. Wow, my voice got high there. Got excited. Here's the deal. Jesus tells a story that we're going to read, and I'm just going to give you the punchline up front so you can see it when we study it, all right? They're in the Sea of Galilee, and there are hills going up to what they called at the time the Decapolis, and it goes up 1,400 feet above sea level, peaks along the shore. And the sea itself of Galilee is actually 680 feet below the Mediterranean Sea. So the heat that comes from being in sort of a desert area below sea level is over the water. And the Jordan River is bringing pretty warm water into the Sea of Galilee. It's warm water. In fact, around the Sea of Galilee, there are hot springs bubbling up from hot water underground. And rulers at different times loved this area because they thought it had healing properties. So most of Jesus' miracles happened around the Sea of Galilee because there's a lot of sick people there wanting to be healed, wanting to find freedom from physical problems. And so all of his ministry is around Capernaum on one side and Bethesda on one side. And so all of his ministry kind of centers around the Sea of Galilee. That's why there's so much healing and so much crisis and so much multiculturalism, because it's the channel of the Jordan River going in one side and out the other onto the Red Sea. And it's full of fish and full of life and all of these cultures and warm, arid temperatures. But because of these huge peaks, there are hills all the way around, and on one side they go up 1,400 feet above sea level, all the way down to sea level where the Mediterranean is, and then 680 feet below that is this tropical sea, this tropical big lake. It's 12 miles long and 8 miles wide and way below sea level, warm air sitting on it, being brought in by the Jordan. It's like a jungle down there at the time. And these frigid temperatures up in the mountains. So what happens is the wind comes in from the Mediterranean, and it comes up these peaks and gets frigid at the mountaintops. And then it comes down, that cold air, right? Which direction does cold air go? Anybody have one air conditioner in a 2-story house, right? The cold air comes down, and the hot air does what? Comes up. So around sea level, right, 680 feet above the Sea of Galilee, these tend to meet. And the cold air coming down off the mountain peaks and the hot air coming off the Jordan in this tropical sea hit each other. And in no time at all, these huge tempests can hit. And no one saw them coming because you can't see the horizon. You can see all the way across the lake. You can see every culture known to man on opposite sides of this lake, but you can't see the horizon. So the storms come quick. Anybody relate to that in your life? You're doing just fine until you get the phone call from the doctor. You're doing just fine until your kid calls and says they wrecked the car or got sick or someone broke their heart or whatever it is. The financial crisis, you don't know you're getting fired till you get fired, and then you're like, what? I've been here 20 years or whatever, right? You don't know. You get a great degree and you can't get the job that you want. Whatever it is. You didn't get married thinking it would be nearly as hard as it is, which is universally true, so I know if you're married, you've experienced that. Here's the nugget about marriage. It's infinitely harder than you expected, and in Christ, infinitely more beneficial than you could have hoped or imagined. Lest I'm scaring anybody off of marriage. But don't do it without Jesus, I'll just tell you that. So here's the deal. When storms strike, Jesus is not trying to put you in a position where you're going to trust him to get you out of the storm as much as he's trying to get you to trust who he is in the storm. He's not giving you those circumstances nearly as much so that you can trust him to get you out of the storm as much as he wants you to trust who he is in the storm. So that's what I want to talk about. Look with me we'll look at a couple of passages, but I'm going to look specifically at Matthew chapter 8. It's a primary text today. I'll put it up here for you. Okay. Here's what I want from this, for me and for you today. I don't want a faith that settles. I don't want a faith that just settles for calm seas, that says, God, I'm trusting you to make my circumstance okay. I don't want a faith that just settles for calm seas. I want a faith that is strong enough and great enough and seated enough on the personhood of Christ that can rest in the midst of the storm. That's what I want. Now, I'd rather not have the storm. Anybody with me? I'd rather not have crisis. I'd rather not. I'd rather not have chronic pain. I'd rather not have struggles in ministry and business. I'd rather not ever have a financial, bubble. It sounds so nice, doesn't it? Financial bubble. I'd rather not have any of the crises that we have. I'd rather not deal with government and politics issues of corrupt people, which is like everybody. Elect this good flesh person or this bad flesh person. Oh, Lord, help us. I mean, our hope is in Christ, not who we elect. It's not in any of those things. But the problem is, I don't want a faith that just says, God, I'm trusting you to get me out of this pain, crisis, health, finances, relationship struggle, governmental problem. I want a faith that says, you're enough for me in the storm. In the storm. And so read this with me, and let's see if we can find out what that might look like. I'm going to read it off here. It's bigger. It says, now when he got into a boat, he had been preaching along the seashore. The crowds got really full. People couldn't see him. They're on the flat seashore of the Sea of Galilee. So he hops into a boat, and he goes just a few yards off the shore so that everyone could see him, and he can speak across the water, and everyone can see and hear him a little bit better. So in that boat, the disciples hopped in with him, and he taught the crowds. But then at the end, it says, when he got into the boat, his disciples followed him, and suddenly a great tempest arose as they're starting to cross to the other side. Great tempest. Now, we don't use the word tempest a lot unless it's a video game. Another translation uses the word gale or hurricane force winds. That's what that means. Suddenly, hurricane. Suddenly. Hurricane force winds. Down the mountain into the hot air and swirled up into a storm instantly. So suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea so that the boat was covered with waves. But he, Jesus, was asleep. Then his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we're perishing. Lord, save us, we're perishing. Another translation, I'll just kind of allude to a couple of things, uses the phrase, don't you care that we're going to die? Right? I think it's Mark that says, don't you care that we're going to be destroyed? This is not rain filling the boat. This is waves filling the boat. This is choppy. This is hard. It blindsided them. And these guys who grew up and were recruited for ministry from these waters, they fished for a living, are suddenly terrified that their boat is full of water from the waves crashing into the boat. And he's asleep. Now, what's wrong with him? Really, what's wrong with Jesus that he's sleeping in the storm? Any thoughts? Really, anybody? You're like, is this rhetorical? Does he really want me to answer? No, really. Any idea why Jesus is okay just sleeping in the storm? He knows his Father. So is he thinking that the storm is not dangerous? Yeah, the storm's okay. Nobody really, Does he know that the storm's just not going to cause anybody any problems? Not necessarily. But he's not worried about its implications to him. Why? Because he's confident not in what the storm's going to do, but in who his Father is. I know who I am. I know who Dad is. I'm okay. Some of you grew up with fathers that you learned you could trust. Some of you grew up with fathers that you learned you couldn't trust. And that imagery then started to translate probably into every other relationship that you have. Can I trust this person? Can I trust other people? Am I a person that can afford to trust other people? Because maybe what I got from my dad wasn't because of him. Maybe it was because of me. Maybe I shouldn't be able to trust anybody. Maybe it's my fault, my problem. So we grow up with this worldview largely based on our relationship with our dad. And Jesus slept in the boat, not because of his confidence of what would happen in the storm, but he knew his Father who spoke those waves into existence in the first place. He and his dad got together and separated the earth and the sea. In fact, interestingly enough, it says that he caused a wind to come and separate the earth from the sea. So he wasn't scared of the wind, and he wasn't scared of the waves, and he remembered carving out that sea with his dad when creation happened. So I don't think he was worried because the sea was okay, and he wasn't mortal, and it wasn't going to bug him. I think he just knew who he was, and he could trust his dad. We're going to talk more about that. So here's the deal. You can relate to this. He is struggling, or the disciples are struggling, and they come to Jesus and they say, don't you care? Don't you know? Don't you realize we're all going to die? Why don't you save us? Help us. They woke him up. Lord, save us. We're perishing. Come on, man. This is a problem. You ever felt like God doesn't know your problems? Don't you realize this is going to kill me? Don't you think that if I could do this and this and this, we'd be better? I would trust you if you had any of those conversations with God. God, I'm trying to trust you, but you're not doing your part. I'm making my deposits, and I'm not making the withdrawals. Come on, man. I need some dividends on my investment in Christianity this week. Things are tough. You know that's you. I think that's what the disciples are going. We've got God in the boat. Well, they don't really realize that yet. They're about to. We've got his chosen one in the boat, whatever that means, and we're about to die. Don't you care? Help us. Now, it's interesting to me that they went to him to save them, and yet, as we'll see, they're astounded that he does. God, save us. Don't you even care? See, it means that I don't expect him to save me because I'm assuming that if I'm in this trouble, he doesn't really care about me in the first place. So I can say save me. They weren't concerned about his power. They were concerned about his concern for them. God, I know you can, but I don't think you will. I don't think you care enough about me to save me. I know you can save me. Why aren't you saving me? Now, come on, you know you've said that. I know you can. I don't know why you aren't. We start to bribe him. I'll do this. I'll do that. There's nothing you can offer God that he didn't give you in the first place. Nothing you can bribe him with that he didn't give you as an experience of trusting him with it in the beginning. your marriage, your kids, your job, your ministry, your finances, your health. You do not get to barter with God for those things because those things are already his. You can't barter with him because you have nothing to offer. He has all the cards. The only thing you ever get from God is by grace. It is the only economy of our life with God. I will take it if you will give it to me and I realize that you're the source of it, so what you have for me, I'll take. I need it all. Give it to me. That's called being a good child to a good father. I need something and I can't get it anywhere but from you. So they come to him terrified that he doesn't care enough about them to keep them from perishing, because they're obviously asking him to save them. And so he responds, he says, but he said to them, why are you fearful, O you of little faith? You have enough faith to know I can save you, but I don't have enough faith to think that I might. O you of little faith. And this is interesting to me. It means that the crisis these guys are in is that they have a little faith. I thought a little faith was a good thing. I thought the whole mustard seed, you can move mountains. Remember that? What's the problem? He's saying the problem isn't that you're wrong, that I can save you, and your problem isn't that you cried out to me, because I am the guy you should cry out to, but there is a problem. You're terrified. Why are you so fearful? As if I can't save you or won't save you or don't know what you need, and we're going to look at that a little bit more. So he says, you have a little faith. What's the deal? Why are you so scared that you have such a tiny little faith? Puny faith, that's the problem. Not zero faith, puny faith. And I think, bam, that's me, right between my eyes. I know who God is. I know what he's capable of. I know that he loves me. I've read those verses, but in the midst of the crisis, I try to pretend I have faith. God, I know you can fix this problem. I'm trusting you. And he doesn't. Okay, a little louder. God, I know you can do it. In other words, my faith is in what he can do. It's not in who he is. My faith is in what he can do and not who he is. My hope is in what he will do, how he will deliver me, what he's going to accomplish for me. My hope is in his activity, not in his attributes, not in who he is, but in what he will do. I want the provision, not the provider. I want the blessing, not the blesser. He fed the 5,000, and they came after him afterwards and said, hey, what's up? And he's like, you didn't come for me. You came because you wanted more food. We want what we can get from him on our terms, our terms, our way, and our timing. And he loves us, cares for us, knows what we need, and is capable as God based on how well he meets our criteria. It's dangerous. It's not that we don't know he's the source. It's that we want him to be the source of what we want, when we want, how we want. It's a little faith. It's a puny faith. It's okay, but it's not best. Then he arose. I love this. He's sleeping on in the Amplified or in the Greek, you'll see it's kind of a leather cushion. It's not really a pillow. He's laying on a cushion that fits into the stern of the boat. So he's laying up there, being tossed around by the waves, just snoozing away. And they wake him up, and he hasn't even stood up yet. Just imagine it. He just kind of lifts his head or sits up a little bit, and he goes, why are you so afraid, you little faith guys? And then he arises, right? It says he arose. He turned to the sea, and it says he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. A great calm. God turned off the volume. He didn't turn it down. He turned it off. In an instant. So the men marveled. I love Mark's word there. He says they were terrified. Well, they were scared before, weren't they? Who can this be that even the winds and the sea obey him? Who can this be? See, the problem was not that the wind and the sea and the waves and the storm weren't dangerous. It's that they didn't know who they were with. Who is this guy? And what God wants you and I to be doing in the midst of our circumstances, going, okay, God, show me who you are. I want to know you in this. If we understood who we were with, we would be eager to know him more eager to know the God of creation in our life and in us more. I want to know him. And this is the perfect venue. We'd wake up and go, wow, I don't know how I can get done what I need to get done and be hurting or struggling or frustrated or whatever like I am. We would get up and go, wow, there's no way I can do this. But I want to know you more than I want to accomplish everything I think I'm supposed to do today. So you show me who you are. I want to know you. See, I'm only terrified of the things that I don't know God is big enough for. I'm only terrified of the things I don't know God is big enough for. Anybody been anxious about anything this week? No one? It's just me? Sorry. I've been there before. It's all right. Used to it just being me. Is God bigger than that? Now, most of us in the church, in the church, even the people that don't understand this grace life that I think Drew and I teach about all the time, that don't understand the finished work of cross and this grace economy, and that we're co-crucified and co-resurrected to a new identity and co-ascended and seated at the right hand of the throne of God and learning to live from that place that we are with him, finished, at rest. Even when we know that, even those that don't know that, all of us, I think our issue often is that we know God is bigger than the crisis. We just don't know why he's not doing what we think he should in that crisis. God, I know you can heal me. I know you can. Since 1989, I've been going every day. God, I know you can get rid of the pain that I'm dealing with. I was in a car accident. I know you can get rid of it. I know you can. I have reasons to think that you might. I have every reason to think that you might not, because it was 1989. It hadn't happened yet. But it doesn't make me think he can't. It makes me think he has a reason for not, and I don't like that. It brings into question all kinds of things for me. Y'all have anything like that? God, if you're allowing stuff that hurts me, literally or figuratively, if you're allowing people that I love to reject me, or you're keeping me in anxiety or allowing me to stay in anxiety over those that might reject me or accept me or how I'll do or how good I am or how I'm not or whatever the issue is, whatever causes the anxiety in your life, your performance anxiety of being a good Christian, a good person, a good parent, a good student, whatever it is. You're allowing that in my life, so maybe you're able, but you don't know what I really need. Let me convince you. Let me win what I want from you. How much do I have to pray? How much do I have to read? How much do I have to memorize? How much do I have to attend or give or go or serve? Or what do I have to do to get what I want from you? Because we know he can, he's just not. So I must not be doing the right thing. If God's activity is based on your activity, then you're God. You're determining his activity. If he's going to live out of obligation to you, and you're going to direct what he does by what you do, I'm doing enough so I've earned something from him, that's not love. God doesn't love you. He's just giving you what you've earned. He doesn't want you to earn anything from him, ever. And it's hard, because we want to guarantee what we get from him. If I earn it, then he has to do it, right? I'd like it to work my way. So here's the deal. God is not wanting you to trust him to get you out of the circumstance nearly as much as he's wanting you to trust him, who he is, in the circumstance. What does it look like to have a little faith? So I want to give you 3 signs. These are not to-dos. These are actually what makes their faith a little faith. It's kind of a backwards message, right? Instead of things to have a big faith, we're going to talk about what made their faith little faith. So here it is. What does it look like? Number 1, they're fearing for their life. They're fearing for their life. The problem wasn't that they went to Jesus to be saved. It's that they needed something and they didn't trust that God knew what they needed. I need something and God doesn't know, so I'm panicked. Why are you asleep? Don't you know we're in crisis? Don't you know we're about to die? Don't you know we need saving? They wouldn't have come to him if they didn't think that he could save them, so they're wanting to make sure he knows. Hey, by the way, FYI, storm, bad. Salvation, good. Help, white flag. In case you hadn't noticed, we're about to die. And God knows. God knows. Number 2, not only is there a sign of little faith that I'm fearing for my life, like God doesn't know what I need. God, you've got to fix this. But 2, not feeling loved. Don't you care? Don't you know that we're about to die? Don't you know that we're about to be crushed? And don't you care? Because even if you know, you haven't done anything. I mean, if you do know, then you must not care. And if you care, then you must not know. Now, most people in the church have one of these two problems. Most of us who are believers, we've accepted Christ for eternal salvation, and we're trying to trust him enough to follow him in our circumstances, but we have all of these needs that we don't know how he's going to meet, and so we want to tell him how we want them met. And if he doesn't meet them our way, then he's probably able, but he either doesn't know what we really need, or he doesn't care enough to give it to us. Does God love you or not? If I want God to prove that he loves me by healing my back, if I want him to prove that he loves me by fixing everything I've ever done wrong in my daughter's relationship, right, which is a big list. I hope she doesn't have it written down somewhere, but yeah. It's a big, if I want him to just come in and make everything the way I want it to be in any or all situations in my life, if that's what I want from him, how does that make him feel? How relational is that? God, here's my list. Santa Claus God is a big problem. If you love me, here's what I need from you, as if he doesn't know what I need. What God is calling us to is not a life that just trusts him for what we want from him or how we want our needs to be met, but trusts him as the need meter such that I don't live my life for my needs. I can be available to him because he knows what I need. Matthew 6, Jesus said, your Father knows you need all of these things. He knows what you need. He knows what your life is made of. He knows exactly what's going on in your life. He knows. And so if he knows, then we have to go, well, if he knows, then why am I dealing with this? He must not care about me. We think that he either doesn't know. We trust him for salvation, so we must be able, but he either doesn't know what we really need. He's wrong and I'm right. There's a problem. Or he just doesn't care enough to do it. He's going to allow me to suffer just because he can. And the third problem, and I think we do deal with this, is that we don't know that he's able. We're shocked by his activity. The guys ask him to save them. He does, and they go, whoa, he saved us. Well, what were you asking for? Don't you know we're going to perish? Don't you care what's going to happen to us? Won't you, intervene in some way? And he goes, sure, let me take care of that, you little faith boys. It was a horrible phrase. I'll come up with a better one before we're done. Don't knit that on the back of the club jackets. Little faith boys, So, fine. Don't you, why are you so afraid? Why do you have such a little faith? Calm the sea, hush, be still. And I suspect he went back to sleep because they had a whole conversation. He's not standing there going, yeah, I wonder, who is this guy? Oh, wow, maybe you should ask me. He's not doing that. I think he went back to sleep. And so they're astounded by his activity. This happens over and over and over in Scripture. One time, Jesus is walking into Jerusalem, and he's hungry, and it's early in the morning, and he walks up to a fig tree, and it looks like it's in bloom, and so they walk over to the fig tree, and he looks at it, and there are no good figs on it. It hasn't produced any fruit. It looks good, but it's not good. Now, it's not coincidental that he's about to walk in and confront the Pharisees, who look good, but have no fruit. And he's about to turn over their tables and run everybody out because they're just trying to look good so that they can get their needs met from the people in the synagogue, right? We're going to charge you to be good religious people, and God will bless you because you pay us. So he is doing this thing. He rebukes the good-looking tree that has no fruit. And then they go into town. He turns over the tables, drives people out of the synagogue. They're walking back by later, going back out to Bethesda, where they're staying with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And I love this. Peter, Impetuous Peter, sees the tree and he goes, oh, look, Lord, the tree that you cursed is all withered and dying. And he's like, duh. Why are you astounded by this? Jesus says this, why would you be so astounded by this? You're going to see much greater things than this. Why would you think that what I curse would not produce, and what I bless would produce? Now here's the lesson. Looking good does not produce fruit, but God will bless or curse and produce or not produce whatever he stinking wants in your life. So these guys in the boat are going, Lord, save us, and he rebukes the sea and the wind. I tried to put those together and get sand. I don't know why. Sea and wind and sand. I don't know. And so he rebukes it, and it's calm, and he goes back to the nap because he hasn't slept for 2 days, and they're going, who is this guy? And it says they're terrified of him because the wind and the waves obey him. And I'm thinking, why would you be astounded? You went to him for help, and he intervened. I think they thought that he would, I don't know, wrap a bubble around him and float to the other side, or I don't know what, but they didn't expect him to command the wind and the waves. You know, he wanted them to jetson over to, I don't know what they were thinking. We're just going to teleport somewhere else, or, you know, he's going to pray to God and God's going to, I don't know. Birds are going to come pay. I don't know what they were thinking, but this astounded them. They were shocked by God's activity. And I think one of the problems is we think if God loves me and he's able and he knows what I need, because I know what I need and he needs to do what I think, then he's going to save me this way. And when he's not working in the way that I want in my life, then I think that he's not working in my life. And the reality is when I come to God and I say, God, you know what I need, and you love me enough to take care of me, and your ways and thoughts are higher than my ways and thoughts, so you bring about what you want in my life, and I'm going to trust you to be my need meter because of who you are, and I'm not going to have to worry about how I'm going to get my needs met. I'm going to be available to you, and you do what you want through me and in me. You do what you want with me in the storm. Then he is freed up in a way in my life to do things that don't meet my criteria, but I don't go without my needs being met. And what God did for these guys on this boat was much greater than what they asked for. They wanted to be saved, and what he did is realigned their fear. They were terrified of the storm. When they got, they went into the boat and they were capable of being terrified of the storm, right? Storm came and they were afraid. And when they came to him, it wasn't like, God, I'm wondering what you're going to do about this. They came going, don't you care? Don't you know? Aren't you able? Help us. It wasn't that they asked him. It's that they were terrified, as if he didn't care, didn't know, and couldn't help them. And yet when they hit the other side, and they got over to the other side of the lake, they were no longer afraid of the sea and the waves and the wind. They were afraid of him. He realigned their fear. You're bigger than the storm. They were. It says they were terrified. Who is this guy? Who are we talking to? Who's in our boat? You need to be asking that question. In the middle of your crisis, you need to be saying, look, I don't know what to do with my physical problem. I don't know what to do with my financial problem. I don't know what my career is going to look like. I don't know where my relationship is going to come from. I don't know if that person's going to accept me or reject me. I don't know lots of things. And what I do know, God's not doing. God's not doing what I think I need most of the time. And what we need to say is, who's in the boat? Who's in me? Who is it that I've received? Because is he one that cares about me? Is he one that knows what I need? Is he one that's capable of bringing about what I really need? Then I can trust him with how he does that, and I can be available for what he wants to do through me. I put it this way. There's a table, I should have thought about this. On this music stand, there are 3 legs, and it's relatively stable because there are 3 legs. They're small legs relative to its height, right? Can y'all see that? Small legs relative to the height of the stand, right? It's much higher than the legs are wide. So it's kind of topsy-turvy. It's not as stable as it would be if the legs were each as long as this was high. So when God grows us deep in our knowledge of him, what he's doing is he's increasing what I call the legs of the table of faith. He's increasing the stability of our faith, and there's 3 of them. The first one is if I trust that God knows better than I do. If God knows better than I do, he knows what I need. And the second one is if he really cares about me. If he loves me, I like to say totally. The red up there is kind of hard to see. If he loves me totally. So maybe he knows what I need, but he doesn't care about me, so he's not going to do what I need. He's not going to take care of me. So even if he knows, he has to love me. And the third is he able? That God is more than able. See, if I know, if the legs of my faith, the table of faith that I call it, if the legs of my faith are such that I know that he knows better than I do, so even if he doesn't do what I want him to do, he knows better than I do. It doesn't have to be what I think. I don't know how you're going to do it, but that's not my problem. That's your problem, God. You ever told God what his problem is? Start. God, this thing that I'm dealing with, it's your problem. I know it sounds different. It's kind of a pun. I'm not saying, you know what your problem is, God? You don't listen to me enough. I'm not saying that. God, this thing that I'm dealing with, this is your problem because you know what I need. God, this thing that I'm dealing with, I know that you love me and I know that you know better than I do and I know that you're able of bringing about what I really need. So I'm going to trust you in the circumstance and I'm going to be available for what you want to do through me because I don't know what that is. The legs of faith. The table is only as stable as those legs are long. And so if I know that he loves me, and I know that he knows better than me, but I think he's this distant God who saved me once upon a time and set everything into motion, but he's not involved in my day-to-day activity. It's just like, hey, however that works out, man, know that I love you. See you when you get here, you know. That's not what he's up to in your life. Our problem is that we need to know him more, not get more from him. Our problem is that we need to know the God who knows better than we do. And we need to know that how much he loves us in our relationship with him. And we need to know that he is able. We need to know him more. The problem is not what he's doing. The problem is not what he knows. The problem is not what he's capable of. The problem is not whether or not he is knowing, loving, or capable. The problem is we don't know how knowing, loving, and capable he is. Do you see the difference? The problem is not that God doesn't know. The problem is not that God doesn't care. The problem is not that God isn't able. The problem is I don't know how knowing, loving, and able he is. So our job is not to get God to fix. Our job is to know the God who is bigger than any problem needing to be fixed. I don't want a faith that removes me from every storm. I want a faith that puts me asleep with Jesus in the front of the boat. Was Jesus wrong to be asleep? You ever thought about that? What's wrong with him that he's asleep in the middle of the storm? Even if he's going to be okay, he's not concerned about anybody else, is he? Is God worried about you? Oh, Beezy, I've got to get you on track. Is he panicked this morning? You know what Jesus' attitude, God's attitude is towards you today? Read Zephaniah 3:17. God sings and dances over you. He's excited about you. You're in the middle of crisis like a child crying for milk, and he's going, oh, look at that. And yet to us, it's terrorizing. Ah! I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm scared, I'm nervous, I'm broken, I'm worried, I'm anxious, I'm frail. And he goes, oh, look, you're growing up. I've got that. I've already got that. What you're crying for, I've already got on the stove. What you're needing, I've already arranged for. He's not a bad dad. He's not a bad dad. You're not crying for stuff that he doesn't know you need. You're not desperate for him to intervene in your life in ways that he's not capable of. And he's not just withholding it because he wants to finish watching the ball game. He's intimately involved in your life and wanting something greater for you than you do. What he wants is for you to grow in your trust in every way of him in your life. Okay, I'd love to spend more time on the table of faith, but Drew asked me for some study questions, so he's going to post, I think, online some study questions that deal with what that looks like in your life. I hope you'll get those. So here are the questions. God, do you know what I need? Next time you go and ask for intervention, you wake up Jesus in the front of the boat. God, why aren't you paying attention to me? Why aren't you taking care of this? Which happens every day. Let's just be honest. If I can admit my crisis, then I can give it to God and make it his problem. If I'm not willing to admit my crisis, if I'm pretending that I'm trusting him, no, I'm just trusting God. If I say that enough, then he'll fix my issue. We're just faking it. And I think God's chipping away at the sentimental, candy-coated excuse of faith, our little faith, so that we come to the place of going, okay, I've been saying that I trust you, and I've been trying to do all of the right things, and I've been trying to come to church and say all the right words and learn this grace economy that Mike and Drew and all these guys are telling me about, and yet you're still not doing what I want you to do. And he's going, yeah, that was never the point. The point is that you would know me. And how can you get to know the God that's bigger than your circumstance if you're never in any bigger circumstances? How can you get to know the God that calms greater storms if you're never in greater storms? How can you get to know the rest of Jesus Christ in the midst of crisis if you never are with Jesus who is at rest in the midst of the crisis? You have to be in the circumstance to learn who God is in the circumstance. And we'd rather avoid, go around, go over, get out of. God, get me out of this. And he's going, are you kidding? It's taken me 43 years, Mike, to get you into this crisis, knowing what you know and not knowing what you don't know so that you can get to know what you don't know. Because your problem is your problem is not that God doesn't love you, and your problem is not that God doesn't know what you need, and your problem is not that he isn't capable of doing what you want or what he wants. He's capable of much more, he loves much more, and he knows much more. The problem is you don't know the one who knows, loves, and does more. You don't know him. You know him a little bit, but he's put you in a circumstance where you don't know for sure. You don't know for sure. And the reason you're in the storm is so he can convince you. Are you willing to go out on the open sea where waves can hit you and topple the boat in order to know the God who is greater than the storm he is taking you in? Are you willing to walk into the fiery furnace to know the God that is greater than the fiery furnace? Are you willing to walk into the lion's den to know more the God that is greater than the lions? You cannot know the God that is greater than the circumstance without being with God in the circumstance. And yet all we want is out of the circumstance. He's going, are you kidding? This is the perfect circumstance for you to figure out more of who I am, which is his goal for you, that you would know him who is your life. I said I was going to move on. I lied. How is God realigning your fear? How is he taking you from awe and wonder and desperate thinking about your circumstances to the awe and wonder and desperate desire to know him who is the great mystery in your life, who defines you and overwhelms you? How does he realign your fear? He often uses a fearful circumstance to reveal his preeminence in your life. And then second, how have you built your most trusted relationships? Think about the people that you really trust. You don't have to worry about it all. They're coming over and it doesn't matter what the house looks like. You're going through something and you don't mind them seeing how messy you are in it. You know, when you're crying and blubbering, you're not trying to look good to them. You're really most trusted. There aren't many, right? You're sick and need someone coming and cleaning you up, not just taking care of something. Who do you call then? How did you get to trust them that much? Probably because you already went through junk with them, and they were okay with you in your junk. The last crisis you really didn't want them in the middle of, but they intervened and they got in the middle of, and they were okay with you in the middle of your junk. So guess what you do the next time you're in the middle of junk? Hey, come on over. I've got a crisis, I got to leave the house is a wreck, you're the one that I trust to come over and be okay with me even though the house is a wreck. Or I'm a wreck, or my kids are a wreck, or my dog is a wreck, or whatever. I'm okay with you being in the middle of my mess because I can trust you. The only way you know that is by going through the mess. Intimacy is directly proportional to trust. Intimacy, just think about it. Intimacy is directly proportional to trust. I cannot be more intimate. I cannot know God more as he is, apart from learning to trust him more. The more I know him, the more I trust him. There's only one caveat to that. I can get to know someone that's untrustworthy, and I don't trust him more. The more I know him, the less I trust him. But that doesn't happen with God. If the person is trustworthy, the more I know him, the more I trust him. You ever known anybody you couldn't trust? How'd you figure that out? That's not God. Don't avoid the mistakes with God that you've made with other people. He's not them. And then lastly, where are you placing your hope? Where are you placing your hope? Is it in what he's going to do in the circumstance, or is it in who he is in any circumstance? And what God will do or in who he is. You cannot presume upon his activity You cannot presume upon what he's going to do. You can only, his plan for your life, his plan for this circumstance. You do not know what he's trying to bring about. You do not know how he's going to meet your need. You do not know what his agenda is through anything that you're dealing with. All you can know for sure is who he is in the circumstance. God, you are God. You love me. You know better than me. You are capable of bringing about what you want. I don't know what I need. I don't know how loved I really am. I certainly am not capable of solving my own problem, so I'm going to just throw myself on your grace. You do with me as you want. My hope is not in what I want you to do or how I can bring that about. My hope is in who you are. Period. And if I suffer, I trust you. That's not a little faith. Guess how you learn it? You go through it. You learn it because you go through it. Is God a good God that he lets you learn how to trust him in crisis? No. He wants you to know him more. The problem is the only way you're going to learn it is in crisis. He loves you too much to not know who he is, so he never lets you out on the ocean. So here's the deal. You don't need to see that. My hope for you is that you will say, God, I can't fix my own faith. I don't want you to leave here and go, okay, I'm going to trust you more. Yeah, good luck with that. It's like loving your neighbor more. I love that. Just love God and love others. Yeah, everybody close your eyes on the count of 3. Love people more. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, I feel so good about them. It will never happen. You can't make yourself trust God more. But what you can do is in the middle of the circumstances that you don't like, you can choose, okay, God, I know what you're doing is bringing me to a place of trusting you more, of knowing who you are, of knowing how much you love me, of knowing that you know better than I do, of knowing what you're capable of. I don't like it. I don't want to be here, but you know better than me, and you can bring about what you want for me, and you love me enough to want better things than I do for me. And so I want cake for breakfast, and he loves me too much to give me cake for breakfast every morning. And I'm just going to trust him. I learn over time that what I want from him is not nearly as good as knowing him more. I learn, and it's hard. But my prayer for you is that you will not settle, that you will grow in your knowledge of him who is your life, and no longer settle for what you want from him, because what you want is to know more of him whom you already have in full. You've got him. He's yours. It's by grace. He's not waiting for you to do something to get more from him. He's not withholding what you want from him because you're not doing the right thing. He's not waiting for you to step up in some area of your life. If you know Jesus Christ and you've accepted Jesus Christ, you don't get part of Jesus Christ. You have him all the time, in every circumstance. You're not trusting what he will do. You're trusting who he is in you in the circumstance. And that's what I want, is that we would be willing to admit our little faith, my puny faith, and that I would be willing to say, God, what I want from you is not as good as you are to me. So I'm going to submit myself in the circumstance for what you're going to bring about, because only he can realign your awe. Only he can realign your hope. Only he can do it. But if you will receive it, if you will pursue him where you do have opportunity, you can't change your faith, but you can make a choice. I don't trust you, but I want to trust you. Change my trust. I don't feel okay. I don't want you to do this to me, but I'm going to choose to trust you. Change my heart. He has to do it. Anybody in here capable of changing your heart? Here's what I want and here's what I don't want. Yeah, I can't change what I want and what I don't want, but he can, and the way he does it is by walking us through life with him. Let's pray.